So yes, I'm gonna talk about today about making every day, mostly my digital art practice. I'm gonna share a bit how I got started with doing this daily, what kind of tools I'm using, and what kind of key elements I'm using. And yeah, so I've been creating one artwork every day since January to 1st of January 2015. And that's 3 years, 10 months, and 13 days, if you include today. And that's 1413 days. And if I tell people that I'm doing this for so long, everyone is always amazed. But for me, it's just something I do. It's just a little task that I'm doing daily. And it's really fun and enjoyable to do this every day. And it has also some kind of advantages to do this daily. So how did I get started doing this? It kind of started a little bit earlier than that day. So I have a background in graphic design, and I went to study interaction design. And for me, kind of structures and grids and aligning elements, I really enjoy. And that's obviously also a lot to see in my work. And I also really wanted to see how I can use these design elements that I've been taught, that how can I make them or use them in making more art. So it didn't really start with coding. In 2013, 2014, I went to, it was, I think, a year, 2 years after my graduation of my bachelor in interaction design, and I really wanted to make more work, experiment a bit more, what you kind of do when you are studying. You have all the freedom to do whatever you want, but then you go working and you're kind of not doing anything for yourself or exploring. You're kind of focused on, oh, I need to make money, need to work, and only do that. So it started kind of with Hexels. Hexels is a drawing software. You can draw in grids. So it's a grid-based drawing software. You can do different kind of grid elements. And I was also creating these visual things, but also animations with them. Also in 2014, I went back to programming. And back to programming means for me, well, when I studied interaction design, and I really wanted to study interaction design because I really was curious about how to make things myself, program stuff, and design things, and the interaction of objects, things, whatever. But when I had study there, and I did get some programming, open frameworks, and processing, I really wasn't good at it, or it really didn't get to me. And back then, we also worked a lot in projects, and there will always be someone that was better in programming, so I would stick more with design or the interaction of things we were making. So yeah, I wanted to go to interaction design to do it myself, but ended up not really doing it in the end. I still learned a bit about it. And I was thinking a lot about making patterns, and I thought, well, if I'm going to use just a drawing software, it's going to take ages. And then I came across Joshua Davis' Skillshare class, about programming and graphics. And he created the Hype framework that works together with processing to create in a kind of different way, easy way, well, yeah, a different way than you would do normally in processing, and using also SVG elements to create these patterns. And for me, coming from more a design background, it was really helpful to use different small elements to create my patterns. So in 2014, I was creating some animations, some patterns, and yeah, it was interesting to see, but I really didn't want to show my work to anyone because it's not good enough. I think also the structure and the grid, I always want everything to be perfect, and it's never going to be perfect. So yeah, I was showing it to people, and they were, oh yeah, it's nice, but not doing anything with it. So I said to myself, I kind of also need to break this always making something perfect. So in September 2014, I said, well, I challenged myself to just do it a month, make something every day, and upload it on Tumblr back then. So yeah, there are the animations with hexels and a lot of patterns with the Hype framework. So having this daily deadline really helped to kind of scale a bit down that it shouldn't be perfect. And it's also, it doesn't have to be perfect, but it is some kind of sketch you're kind of exploring. You never can make something perfect each day or every day. And also it's good to challenge yourself to explore in a broader way. And that deadline, the daily deadline, really helped because I'm not going to spend 24 hours a day to make my daily thing perfect. I also need to do some other stuff during the day. So, and it was really hard as well to upload it and to get feedback or just send it out in the internet because the whole internet's gonna see it. Well, it's not the whole internet, of course, but it's really scary to start doing that in the start. So between September and the end of the year, I kind of was exploring still a little bit more, but not doing it daily. I missed a few days, so I was not that strict with it. So I was still exploring hexels, and what you see here, also shapes, and that was about combining the shapes that I draw in hexels and using them in my program to kind of generate this different kind of shape that I would never be able to draw. So then the 1st of January 2015 came, and I thought, well, we can just try again to maybe do a month, maybe I can do 2 months, or maybe 6 months, but I'm still doing it today. And I really thought in the start, oh, maybe if I do it 2 months or 6 months, then I will have everything done that I could imagine, and I won't have any inspiration anymore to make anything else. But as you see, that's not true. You kind of keep on exploring, getting new inspiration, and using that in different ways, combining new tools. So in this daily practice, making something every day, it's a lot about exploring. Exploring in design, exploring in art, the technology that I'm using. And the main areas that I use for my daily art that are patterns. So repeating images, using that in different way. Simple elements that creating a complex structure. And then we have the shapes, so kind of similar as the pattern, but then more into a shape that get generated by using different elements. And then we have the animations that are kind of moving shapes, moving patterns, using same elements multiple times again, but as well moving them in an interesting repetition. So that are the kind of 3 main area outputs that I'm creating with my daily art, and as well it's exploring of the tools that I'm using. I think like more than 1.5 years, it has been mostly the focus of using processing, but in the past also the Hype framework, using Hexels elements with them. I've done a few P5GS sketches as well, and open frameworks. I actually started again using open frameworks. Open frameworks was the one thing that got me introduced into programming, even before processing. So I was really scared of using open frameworks again. And when I went to do my master's in computational arts, I was learning again open frameworks. And then I thought, well, let's switch to open frameworks for now, because it helps to kind of keep on focusing, doing something in a new program, a new kind of structure, a new programming language, to kind of get familiar in how these new things working. So that kind of helps to learn and get new ideas. I'll come back to that later. As well, every day, one of the lovely things to do is exploring colors, experimenting with colors, using a lot of colors, similar colors, more contrast colors. And you can say a lot with colors. And I think it's also really good to have this daily practice of colors, because you really get a feeling of how color combinations work and what works well with big areas or lesser areas. So that's really interesting. As well, different kind of composition, always some kind of structure on the canvas, elements, still really grid-based, but it can also be a bit more randomly, then you don't see the grid that much. So what I would say is I'm kind of creating rules to play with. So it's not that I use every day or create something from scratch every day. I kind of creating a framework where I use and iterate on. So I want to kind of explain now a little bit how some kind of structure of a pattern kind of works and what kind of elements that I'm using. So the grid is really important for me in my work. It gives the structure to the artwork, and you see grids and structure everywhere around you. And the grid kind of also makes it safe and secure to generate something on that grid. I'm not that good in more organical kind of artworks, but it's also kind of my signature, I guess. So when you have this grid, well, now I just use an element of each point of the grid. It's kind of boring. So when you using just a few elements and kind of generating it randomly on the canvas, it already gets a little bit more interesting. But still, having that underlying grid, it makes it pleasant to look at. If we use a different shape, kind of a different look you will get, but also with the previous shape and a square, it's kind of a safe structure and kind of calm to look at. But if we use a triangle in a repetition, it already gets a bit more exciting, a bit more energetic, but when repeating, it's still a bit boring. So we could use, again, doing the shape randomly on the grid, but not on every point. Or we can add another rule, and that rule could be, for example, rotating it in different ways. So here we already have a more interesting structure and something our eye wants to explore. We want to see familiarity inside. We want to see different kind of repetition. Also kind of new structures are emerging. And you can find nice little elements in this whole artwork. So you can already do a lot with just one shape and create something interesting. But if we use multiple shapes and use that, again, randomly on the canvas, also rotating sometimes, depending on which shape it makes sense. But then also new, and here I'm just using 4 different kind of shapes, but also when the shapes get randomly combined on one spot, you are getting new shapes you want to kind of look for. So, well, most of my work is never black and white. Color is really important for me, so let's add a little bit of purple from grow, because we are here. So we already have a little bit more feeling, and I like to mostly use kind of 3 to 4 different colors to make it a bit more colorful, energetic, and you have, again, different kind of clusters you want to explore. Well, and I think it's a bit small now. We can still see the grid well in the back, so we kind of see the structure still. But if we use a random size of the elements, it already gets a lot more exciting. And as well, when using different kind of sizes, the grid slowly disappears. It becomes a bit more organic, but it's still kind of secure on a grid, and some elements are still aligned nicely. A little trick to even get a bit more exciting image is use different kind of stroke weight. In that way, we also kind of have a little bit of feeling that there is some kind of depth, and it becomes a lot more playful and a lot more brighter to look. So, and generating these things using code, every time when I have an output, it's totally different. Something that I never could design myself by hand or aligning it by myself. So in this example, we see a few random rules. So random is really important in my work, and it's fun to use because it also gives a surprising kind of element in my exploration. So here we using the shapes on a random position. We use 4 random shapes that we can choose from, 4 random colors we are choosing for, 5 different sizes, and 4 different stroke weights. So when the program runs, it just picks randomly which one they want and put it somewhere on a grid position. And it's interesting to just maybe change one thing in this example. So if we change, well, I was talking about making patterns, but also making these shapes, and you can kind of see already some shapes around the canvas. But if we're just focusing on 5 random positions on the canvas, we can generate different kind of shapes. And it's just changing one kind of rule, and we already have a really different kind of look and different kind of elements that we can use. So yeah, it's playing around, making iteration, changing instructions of my program, and kind of see that what comes out, what works well, what works not. And we kind of see these structures as well in the animations that I'm making. So we have grid animations, using mostly same kind of shapes, repeating that in a different kind of offset from each other, and we create amazing, mesmerizing animations with that. With, just really simple shapes. We can also make a circular grid, thinking about the grids in a different way, and we have a really different kind of feeling than a more static grid. And also when you make it a bit more round, it becomes a little bit softer and pleasant to look at. So it's all about repetition again, repeating simple shapes, and as well creating really interesting motions with them, and sometimes with the middle one, they kind of combine, but it just goes, each dot just goes back and forth, really simple. Also using different kind of shapes to create these animation, and it's also interesting to try different kind of shapes. In the middle, you see the arc that I'm using, rotating, and also you can think about, well, using a shape, but also you have kind of the white space that are kind of creating new shapes by using just a simple line. And as well, using a lot of colors is really interesting to explore in these animations, because when moving stuff, it's different than just making a still image. So when I make these things, and every day, it's not that I have a whole list, oh, I want to change that. I just open my program, I kind of iterate on the previous one, what I want to use. And sometimes I do want to have a bit more challenge, or I get bored and I want to find something else to do. So I have in my work as well some little challenges that I'm challenging myself in. So adding kind of another rule to my own thing. Here I use the same colors 3 days in a row, but having different kind of shapes, different kind of structures. And it's interesting to force myself to use the same color, and then it somehow makes it also easier, because I don't need to choose the color that day, but you kind of go more into the structure. You have more time to explore something else. Here are some more iterations of an animation. So just starting somewhere, kind of expanding, what can I do more with it, and exploring different ways. So I think in the first year, I just kind of did what I wanted to do. When I wanted to explore animations, I would go to animations, patterns, and I was kind of floating around the whole year. But I noticed that, and also having these more challenges, I kind of want to dive deeper into more specific things. So this year, I started to do kind of monthly themes. So I would focus monthly on making some kind of animation with a specific structure, or making these kind of shapes. This is 1 month, different kind of, it's the same structure, but you kind of challenge yourself in diving deeper and still exploring new ways. It doesn't have to be every day something amazing new, or it doesn't have to be every day something new in programming. It's valuable to kind of keep on iterating with the same kind of structure, because you kind of emerge and you get little small ideas to explore. And I was saying before, I also used open frameworks for, I think, 1.5 months for my dailies. And it's funny, as you kind of, if you make art with a paintbrush or a pen, a different kind of pen, you sometimes draw also differently, or you write differently with a different pen. And it's the same with the tool you're using. Because you are learning or seeing other ways of creating things, the tool can give also some inspiration to create something differently. So these are, a bit different approach than I was using before in processing. As well, new starts are ugly. In 2016, 2017, I don't know anymore. I thought, well, someday I should go 3D animations. Someday there was a plan, and one day, even when I was busy with my graduation project, I thought, well, I just want to do something new. Let's start with doing 3D stuff. And I didn't really, mostly I take some time to understand what I need to know, but I just thought, well, I'm just gonna look at the process website, get some shapes, and try something with them. So these are the first 3 animations in 3D, what is a little bit not my best work, I guess. But yeah, slowly, when you kind of explore something new, you also have new features that you kind of work with. So I had to learn a little bit about lighting in processing, because then also the colors gets a bit more interesting. And it doesn't have to be in one go to be perfect. It's fine to make some ugly things, because you kind of learn and want to explore how can I make this better. But still, I'm still using kind of the same structures that I was using in my 2D animations, but adding another dimension with it. So then we have a challenge, a new dimension. We can explore a lot of new things. So when you kind of get bored with something, see if you can find something you could explore next. So these new dimensions also give a lot of new ideas. These are one of my favorites for my 3D series. Because you have also the feature of light, you can make interesting things. And in the end, these are just cubes that are rotating and going back and forth, but creating interesting patterns as well. I think last week, so I've been making a lot of patterns, a lot of kind of shapes over the past year, going into more simple kind of shapes. I like exploring. And I always had this idea, oh, I want to kind of do this also moving or do some animations with these kind of random shapes. So last week I started with just adding simple animation, making the shapes bigger or moving them around. And that's what I'm kind of exploring now. So as well as I'm making these rules, I sometimes also need to, because I know the rules, I need to break them. If I keep on playing with the same rules, it's not always interesting. So I'm really like to stay inside the canvas with my animations. But there's also been a few animations that I try to break that rule and go out. So you get, yeah, some kind of different. The middle one, I really wanted to make something kind of ugly 80s thing, exploring, still using kind of the grid, but not aligning it perfectly. And the animations that I always make, they always loop. But in Open Frameworks, where I was also exploring noise function, and then it's a little bit more tricky to loop them. So you have a little point that it's kind of not looping nicely. So it's all about playing with these elements. And I'm kind of see my daily sketches as some kind of sketchbook. I can explore things, playing with the rules that I create and write. But I also really love, and that's kind of also a theme maybe at this conference, from using these digital things and creating them to more physical things. So we've seen before the plotter drawings that I also have been experimenting with. And it's really interesting to see you use another tool, you use a pen that has different kind of features, you use paper, you have different kind of features, and it's never going to be the same if you do it multiple times. As well, some errors emerging that you can't design always yourself. On the left, there is missing something, if you can find it, and on the right, you can see that not all the lines are perfectly drawn. So it's interesting to use also machines and to make it physical, because it's never going to be perfect. And it's also kind of breaking, maybe to make everything perfect. Digitally, you can make it looks perfect, it's nice, but making them more physical, you get this interesting errors. And I think it also makes a bit more human to have these kind of outputs. So I love using machines. I also really love using laser cutters, one of my favorite machines. So I've creating these shapes, and I was thinking, well, how can I make that more physical? So I'm using woods, laser cut them. The shapes are as an output in 2D. I'm kind of thinking myself by hand, how can I make this in multiple layers to construct these shapes together? So for me, it's the sketch making with the program and kind of then exploring how can I make this physical. So these are in colors then. So again, colors is one of my favorite things. So creating, making them more colorful is of course something that I do, but it's also some more physical kind of exploration. I created all these little little wooden cards, for example, with the colors, and I kind of explore, oh, what's gonna use, and I really need to feel it and see it in my own eyes in the physical. If I choose the colors on the screen, it's never gonna work on the wood itself. These are more laser-cut paper experiments that I still need to explore further, because I really like sometimes neon. But yeah, then you need to think about other different kind of rules. You need to work with other instructions because you have multiple layers. So how can you construct something to a shape? And as well, you don't need to expect that it's going to be the same as what you created in 2D, because it's going to work differently in the physical world. I've done some screen prints in the past that I really want to explore some more, as well as prints, high-quality art prints. And it's just amazing to see it printed on paper, to have some structure around, to have it less digital. And I made a little test this year when I had an embroidery machine. And the funny things, in the days back, they were programming also the loom machines, and that was the start of kind of programming, and kind of now using another machine to program a pattern, and kind of going back in more modern machine and still embroidery it. So it's all about play and playing with structures, playing with the software, playing with the tools, and also playing with the machines. Exploring different kind of new ways to make something, explore new ideas, sometimes getting new ideas from other things around. It's also about really good to experiment more and give yourself the time to explore and just see where it goes without any restrictions from a client or whatsoever. And I think it's really important that there should be more art on the web. So I really challenge you all to at least try a month, do this daily. Do take some time, don't get social that month. And just try to make little sketches, and even little iterations can create new ideas. When I did 2 years ago, or when I had 2 years of making daily things, I created this Medium post where I was explaining how I got started and what I'm using, so you can look that back. But there was an interesting quote or thing that I wrote. So it's important to approach creating new things in playful ways. Let yourself discover and explore, and then you will grow. And especially with programming, there's lots to explore and to create. So I think we have a bit more time. I want to close with just hypnotizing you all with all the things that I make in 2017. So it starts the 1st of January and then goes on. So here you can also really see that I was sticking with one certain element and exploring what I can make next. So it was a long time that I didn't do any patterns. So it's also interesting to see going back and forth, you get inspiration of making animations, but as well using things again in patterns. And yeah, different kind of animation, new ideas. And sometimes it's also nice to go back to an old sketch and use that again and see what you can create. Something new, and then I think slowly, yeah, we are getting the first 3D animations. And that's it. Thank you.